Welcome, everyone, to another edition of CPG Insiders. I'm your host, Mark Young, co-host Justin Gerard. We're going to talk about finance today, Justin, and here's one of the reasons. A lot of our listeners are visionary, inventor entrepreneurs, and there's a certain personality to that. I have that personality, and we are about vision and creating things that didn't exist and finding opportunities that nobody else, saw. That personality is rarely good at the numbers side.
Facts.
And sometimes we're so focused on getting that yes out of that buyer that we forget to look at the numbers and make sure that we're going to break even or better when we get that yes.
That dopamine hit of the yes is pretty addictive.
Yes, and then we get so wrapped up in the emotion of, Walmart just brought me in and I'm only going to lose $1 a piece.
Right.
So there's another thing about traditional accounting that I have an issue with in our business, and that is a traditional accounting has a tendency to look backward because there's a taxation mindset.
Yeah.
We're looking backward. The problem is a lot of CPAs don't spend time looking forward.
Right.
They're spending the time looking backward. Now, looking backward is important because it is important to know where we've been and to pay our taxes and to see if we're profitable. But if you're listening to this show, you're a growing brand.
Right.
Chances are you are currently running the largest company you've ever run in your life.
Right. And tomorrow it will be also.
And tomorrow you'll be now running the largest company you've ever run in your life.
Yep.
If you're doing the right job every day, wow, this is the biggest company I've ever run in my life.
Right. So if you could continue just to do autopsies of a company that no longer looks like your current company, then you're going to keep running into problems. You're going to be making decisions that are incorrect because it's based off of faulty data.
Right. The future's bigger than the past. And that's who we are. That's who our clients are. And by the way, if you don't have a mindset that the future is bigger than the past, you're listening to the wrong podcast.
Well, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah, you're in the wrong business because we are about the future must be bigger than the past. Therefore, the past is important, but you need people who know how to project forward for you.
Yeah.
And you need people who understand ledgers. I mean, Justin, you realize how many people that I've talked to who don't know the difference between a credit and a debit?
Oh my gosh. And this is not
seriously.
To be rude, but it's just true.
But they weren't trained on how to read a financial statement.
No,
and
not at all.
I'm going to give our guests an example. I'm going to tell you an example of a $40 million CPG company we're working with. And they ran the company like a party store. So, is there money in the bank? We must be doing okay. The cigar box still has cash in it. So our guest today is Scotty Palmer. He's the founder of Palmer's Strategic Advisor. Scotty Palmer is a licensed CPA. So we're not going to hold that against him because remember, in the world of accounting, and this is what I always tell my CPA, in the world of accounting, your job is to stop exciting things from happening. Because
don't worry, Scotty. We are still friends with lawyers too. It's okay.
My lawyers always refer to them as recovering. So he's a licensed CPA. He does do fractional CFO work, and he works with brands to help them stop bleeding cash and build a financial foundation that can be scaled. So Scotty, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into the CPG spin? Because this is a real niche. Not everybody in the accounting world decided I want to focus on, retail.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. Yes, I am a CPA, but I'm not your normal CPA. A lot of CPAs and accountants they do a lot of backward looking, right? And a lot of compliance type work. And so what I do is I come into a business and I look at that and I say, okay, the important work that they laid for us is showing us where you had been. Now I am going to interpret what that means for where your business stands today. And then what can we do in terms of the future to get your business where you want it to be and where it needs to be, right? Whether that's turning it around or just, you're facing a big growth period. But how I got into doing this work was pretty organic. I mean, I've been in the food and beverage space since I was 15. My first job was at a pizza place. I'm sure, like most people, their first job was at a restaurant or a pizza place, making salads because I wasn't old enough to touch the pizza oven legally. So through that time, and then worked my way up at different restaurants and became a restaurant manager while I was in my undergrad, getting my accounting degree. Graduated, went into public auditing, so even less fun for a CPA. But from there, moved into private after that with my master's degree into private industry, worked for a very large logistics company, supply chain, and then finished my corporate career working for the Honey Baked Ham Company. So really understood, the food manufacturing side, the retail side, the franchise, supply chain, inventory. And that's why I'm in this space now, because I have that experience, I have that knowledge, and I wanted to bring that to smaller businesses, because this is an industry that has some of the most razor thin margins. The industry where brands literally die every single day, and a lot of them. I mean, you go to the grocery store and how many different options do you have for the type of cracker you want to have in your charcuterie board, So that's why I do this work.
So Scotty, let's start with this. A lot of people struggle understanding the difference between cash flow and profitability. We have cash, but seem to be losing money, or we're profitable and we never have any cash. So expand on that a little bit for us.
Yeah, 100%. I have a client that came to me at the end of, beginning of this year, and they were like, they're a smaller CPG brand, about 2.5 million. And they're like, we don't understand. Like, we were profitable 6 figures last year, but we literally have no money in the bank account. And that was true. They profited almost $200,000 last year, but on December 31st, they had $478 in their bank account.
Wow. And where was all their money? In inventory or in receivables?
So actually kind of neither. So once we really started diving into why they didn't have any money, it was a little bit of receivables, a little bit of inventory, but really what it came down to was they had quite a bit of debt, right? So they had factored a lot of their receivables previously. So they were being drained by those weekly. Some of them were actually daily payments. So I got to them a little too late before they were falling on the sword with the factoring. But it was a little bit of that. And then also this particular founder, this business was their only source of income. And it was him and his wife, and they had 6 kids. So it was an 8-person household on one income. So there was a certain amount of money that he was drawing from the business every month to pay for their lifestyle. And so once you factor in the debt, you factored in the receivables that they had, the inventory sitting there, the owner draws, like a lot of that doesn't show up on your P&L, but it's what drains
your $2.5
your
million
bank
is
balance.
not enough money to support that.
No.
Right, exactly. So what we did is we actually started putting some safeguards in place around having cash reserves. We looked at, is there a way that we could maybe be, not go out to eat so many times a week and not need to draw that much money from the business? And then explored other financing options where we actually refinance those factoring loans into using a line of credit that we got them at the bank.
Now, if our listeners remember, we did a show 2 or 3 shows back.
Yeah.
And we talked about factoring. And I'd be interested to get Scotty's play. My opinion of the majority of factors is that they're a corporate version of payday loans.
They're sharks.
They are predatory lenders.
100%.
And
yeah.
And think of the payday loan. You go borrow money against Friday's payday, and now you have to borrow next week against Friday, and you get stuck in this cycle. And you have these predatory rates, and that's a lot of what happens with these factors. And these factors, in many cases, have direct withdrawal capabilities from your checking accounts. So, to your point, Scotty, some of these payments were literally made by the day, weren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Some of them have been daily withdrawals, some were weekly. But yeah, I had another client that I brought on a few months ago, and they were on the back end of ending, being done with their factoring loan. And they were weekly payments, but it was absolutely draining them. And to your point, exactly. Um, Once you have one, you tend to continue and continue to get another and another and another. And that's exactly what happened with them. I mean, they were basically borrowing money every month to cover payroll. And it started with one time that they did it about like 14 months ago to cover a payroll because they didn't have the cash. And here they are again, and they've done another six by this point, and outside of putting their own money in. So around the time that I brought them on, they needed cash fast to cover their payroll, and he had $1 million from his 401k from his corporate career. So his savings that him and his wife were supposed to live on, he had to take.
Yeah, factoring, I mean, it's like a drug almost. I mean, it's you get hooked
Yeah.
into it and it's hard to break it. So, what are the financial metrics that are important in the CPG world?
Ooh, yeah. So, so there's quite a few.
'Ones you think most people are missing?
100%. I think it's really kind of what we were just talking about is understanding cash flow. I had another CPG client that's in Florida, and they're like a meat snack company, and they called me, and this was probably what you mentioned in the beginning of your guys' conversation was getting that call from a big retailer in the Southeast that was like, "We love your product. It's amazing. We want to put you in 50 of our stores, and we want you to be in them within the next 30 days." Right. So they got that big, yes, we want you. And they called me and they're like, "Scotty, we got, we heard from them. They want us in 50 stores. Let's go. Like, this is going to be our biggest year." And unfortunately, as you said, I had to be kind of the one to deflate the excitement in the room and say, okay, this is amazing. Congratulations. But let's pump our brakes a little bit. Okay. Let's take this. Let's go model this out. I'm going to look at what cash is going to look for us over the next 30, 60, 90 days of going into 50 stores. And can we withstand that? I mean, there's a lot of product costs like raw materials and the manufacturing and your production labor that's going to go into
And then
that.
this particular chain you're talking about, what were their payment terms?
Yeah, so I believe they were like a net 60. So
Wow,
so they
that's
were,
actually really good.
That's good.
yeah, it was. So they negotiated great terms with them. But looking at modeling this out and what the upfront cost was and when they were going to get paid, once it landed at their door, they weren't getting paid for, that 60, 70 days after that. So
And they were going to have to fill reorders during that time.
right, exactly, on other accounts. And so modeling that out for the 50 stores with the cash that they had and the cash we knew that was coming in, they were going cash negative like 20 days into production on that PO. So I had to go back to them and say, "Hey, look, looking at how much you're spending, money going out the door to when the money's coming back in the door, we can't do 50 stores. But here's what I also modeled out, and I think that we can do, and this is a better scenario, right? So let's go back to them and say, let's try 10 stores first. Let's prove that the market demand is there, that people are actually going to buy the product, and then from there, if we see that it's selling, and at that point we would have received the cash from those POs and those invoices to this retailer, we'll have the money to be able to withstand going into another 20 stores, and let's slowly scale it from there." So I think it's a lot of looking at, the upfront costs, which is, your payables, right? What's cash going out the door when it's coming back in the door. And I think people tend to get kind of shiny object syndrome, and they look at that and they go, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be in this massive retailer on a shelf, and we're going to win." But if they had done that and they didn't have somebody the voice of reason, somebody that's actually modeling that out to show, that probably would have just killed their brand, because they would have ran out of money. They wouldn't have been able to fulfill their other POs with other customers that they had, and it would have crushed them.
Let's talk about
Sure.
scaling. So a typical client of ours, they start an Amazon business, and now they've got a $4 million Amazon business, $5 million annual Amazon business. And the next step in growth is brick and mortar. So we get them, sometimes maybe we'll get them into Meijer with 260 stores. Sometimes they'll get a PO from Walgreens for 8,000 stores. What kind of chaos does that generate once the excitement's gone? Because think about that. You got a $5 million Amazon business, and Walgreens decided to put you in 8,000 stores.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that in terms of a nightmare and chaos, the supply chain chaos there would be absurd from an operations standpoint. But from a financial standpoint, um, I think there's a little bit of chaos there, right? I think really, again, it comes down to looking into the future. I think it's really just, do you have enough money to do it, and can you withstand it, and then do you have the people and the processes in place to be able to withstand doing that, right? Because that is a huge lift, going into 8,000 Walgreens store.
Right. And a typical entrepreneur is going to say, yes, give me the purchase order and I'll go figure it out.
Absolutely. Right, right. And then they lose sleep because they can't figure out how to do it. And then in the instance of the client that I have, they're in that situation where, they get to a place where maybe they fulfilled 4,000 of getting into 4,000 of their stores, and now they look at their bank account and they go, "Oh no, what have we done? How are we going to fulfill and get into the rest of the 4,000 stores?"
So Justin, we're really good at sitting down with people and kind of helping them lay out their brick and mortar model.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go to Meijer. We're going to go to HEB.
Yep.
We're going to hit, these regional chains. We're going to do Shoppers Drug. We're going to do these things.
Yeah, a channel strategy.
And then we're going to pitch CVS, and then we're going to pitch Walgreens, and then we're going to pitch Walmart, and so on and so forth. When we sit down with someone and we say, here's your channel strategy for the next 36 months, wouldn't it make sense for somebody to sit down and say, now let's plot out our cash flow strategy for the next 36 months?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think those two complement each other so well. Because again, having an operational strategy and a supply chain strategy is one thing, but actually having the numbers behind that to show where you're going to land is the important part. I mean, the old saying is cash is king, right? And if you don't have cash, you don't have a business.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions I have for you, Scotty, is there's something else that we've been talking a lot about, the scaling side of things, right? And in that scaling side of things, there are also points where the business is in it, we'll call it distressful moment. But that's still, those are growing pains, as we like to call them. But what about those brands that you've kind of talked about that have hit that moment of, are we going to have a business? I don't know. What can we do? So for any of our listeners who may be at that moment right now where they're going, I don't know if tomorrow is going to happen. How do you handle those types of business? What would you do? How do you help them?
Yeah. That is a pretty common one, unfortunately. I think a great example of that is a brewery client that I have. So they have a location. They have a tap room, restaurant, but they also have a large production facility where they co-manufacture for other brands. What I did was I took their revenue streams that they had. So they have their wholesale distribution, they have their tap room, restaurant, And then they have their co-manufacturing, right? They were just bleeding money. So the business was just bleeding cash. They were also borrowing money. They were factoring receivables. They were throwing their own money in, and their investor that they had was having to inject more capital into the business. And so what we did is we just started tracking all of their revenue streams because they didn't have that. So they were looking at everything in a blended rate at the top across the three. So what we did is working with their accountant, we started tracking everything by channel. So seeing what their channel mix was, which channels were the most profitable. And I think what a lot of business owners get into is they 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 tend to get stuck in that day to day where this is what they do. I think we're just creatures of habit, and they just do the same thing over and over again and sometimes expect a different result.
Right. Let's try to run
And
faster tomorrow.
exactly, right. Even though they're doing the same thing. Yeah. So so one of the things particularly with them that I uncovered was two things really. One was, my goodness, your payroll is ridiculous. Why do you have so much payroll at a tap room restaurant? This is, in terms of how much the revenue was for the tap room. Um, but basically, the business had grown about 4x what it was today during the COVID era. So they peaked almost at a 10 million. Now they're back down to a normalized 2.5 million, but they're still staffed like they're a $10 million company because it's a local business. It's a very small knit community. And so, so they see all these people like family, but unfortunately that doesn't keep a business open. And then the second biggest thing was the owner told me, yeah, our production facility that does co-manufacturing runs at about like a 50 to 60% capacity every single month. Well, live, we looked at the numbers. We looked at what they were producing in their manufacturing facility versus what they actually produced the last 3.5, 4 months versus what their capacity is to produce at 100%. And they were actually at about 18 to 20% of total manufacturing capacity. Exactly.
Businesses? Did you find there were certain businesses that were dragging the rest of it down?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in true fashion of a restaurant, restaurants are usually just money pits. I think that was the one that was really dragging them down. But the biggest opportunity for them was actually getting to a 50, 60% capacity in their manufacturing facility. I mean, their margins on co-manufacturing uh, for other brands was so much bigger than the restaurant tap room, right? So so that's what we did. We broke down the labor force that they had at their tap room restaurant because they didn't need 24 people there. They needed like 15. But with that, that freed up a little bit of cash in payroll for us to hire 2 salespeople to go chase co-manufacturing accounts. So over a 4-month period, we went from an 18 to 20% capacity to now this month we should be at about a 45 to 50% capacity, and that's going to continue to go because we already have contracts lined up over the next 3 to 6 months to bring that up closer to about a 70%. And there'll be hopefully there'll be a $4 or $5 million company this year with those accounts.
The other thing that happens with the clients that we work with, we're talking about entrepreneurs and inventors, right? They're inventors. They love to tinker. They like to create new things, right? And so a lot of the times what will happen is they'll create their first great product. Oh, now I want to create the next one and the next one and the next one, right? And we have to slow them down to say, whoa, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So if you have 5 products now because you couldn't stop yourself, what's the contribution margin of each one of these products? Are each one of these products actually adding to your bottom line, or are they truly subtracting from it because now you've turned an asset into a liability? Because now
Pareto's law almost always kicks in.
Have you worked with any CPG brands that you've kind of seen a similar pattern with in any way, shape, or form? Like really breaking down and understanding, like, what's really the profitability of your products? What's actually going on in your business mix here? And is it actually serving you?
Yeah. So so there is a chocolate company that I have as a client, and you kind of mentioned it in the beginning there of like the tinkering and the moving and creating new products. That was one of the biggest problems I had when I first brought them on was, why are we continuing to change how many different SKUs we have, and why like it's great to innovate and like come up with these fun, triple chocolate dipped strawberries injected with, strawberry jam inside. Like, great. That's fantastic. And I love that for you guys. And I'm sure it's very delicious. But we're taking time away from producing your top seller, or we're replacing it on the shelves. They have brick and mortars as well. So they're in stores, they're having an e-commerce website, and then also have brick and mortar locations. And, people come in for like the chocolate turtles, and they absolutely love these, but they're replaced by your triple chocolate strawberry stuffed, and so they're coming in, and these are your regular people that are coming into the store. And I've seen it with my own eyes because one of them is local to where I'm at, and I've seen it where they come in and, oh my goodness, you don't have the chocolate turtles? Well, oh, that's all I came in for today. No, I don't want to try your strawberry triple dip stuffed. No thanks. Let me know when you have the turtles again. Right. And so but I think there's a little bit of that and kind of giving them that reality check. But the reality check is set by the numbers, right? So having
It's
that
amazing.
profitability, right, having that profitability by SKU and by their product is the most the most drivable factor to show them what's actually making them money and not. So having that broken down by we kind of mentioned something a little while ago about contribution margin of, looking at how many hours it makes you to take, how many hours it takes to make your chocolate turtle versus your triple strawberry stuffed. Like, what is your actual cost to produce that, and then hold it in your warehouse, right, in a fridge because it's chocolate, and then what are we selling it for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's,
you guys familiar with Kilwin's fudge?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a direct competitor of my client. Yes.
So there's a Kilwin store that my wife would go to, and they made caramel apples on Tuesday, but they sold out of caramel apples by Tuesday night. So if you went in on Wednesday for a caramel apple, they would say, no, those are only on Tuesday, because we only make
Right.
those on Tuesday. How many people come in through the week and ask you for them all the time? We tell them to come back on Tuesday.
Sorry.
Am I missing something here? Because
Right.
because we make caramel apples on Tuesday. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the dumbest thing I ever saw.
It is. Yeah. It's so interesting. It's almost like as if they were doing a exclusive drop. Like, Tuesdays are our caramel apple days, and like that's it. You're either here or you're not here, and if you're not here, you're not going to have one until next Tuesday.
No, that's literally
Maybe
how
you
they
should make
do
them
that.
on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and make a few extra for Wednesday, Friday, Sunday.
Do you see Pareto's law kick in most of these places where 80% of their business is with 20% of their SKUs?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that absolutely happens. Actually, I have another client that's local to me here in North Georgia. They're a distillery, but they only make 4 different products. They have a whiskey, they have a vodka, they have a tequila, and then they have a rum. And they only make 4. They don't make flavors. They don't do anything kind of special. It's just those 4.
Smart.
And you're absolutely right. One of those is their top seller, which is their whiskey. But so that's the one that they spend all of their marketing on. All their ad spend is on their whiskey because it's their top seller. Well, that's the one that actually doesn't make them the most money. Their vodka is what makes them the most money because of all the ingredients that go into making their whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot longer to brew.
It has to
So your
age. Yep.
production labor, it has to age in their barrels for a couple of years, right? So that carrying cost of having that sit there versus their vodka. So their vodka has like a 25% higher gross margin than their whiskey does. So they were pushing this best-selling product, even though it wasn't their most profitable. So what we did is, we know that there's market demand for your whiskey. We don't have to spend 90% of your marketing and ad spend on that. We know people are going to buy it. They know your company buy your whiskey. But what they don't know is that you sell a vodka. So let's take 30-40% more of that marketing and ad spend, and let's go advertise this. Let's go to the local liquor stores that you're in and set up some booths and do tastings and let people try it and use some other mixers that you guys have. And that actually started increasing sales. Well, now look, we have a little bit more money in the bank because now our sales on our vodka are up 35-40%. And these are the things that make you 25 more cents on the dollar than your whiskey does.
So what's the difference between a bookkeeper or a controller and a CFO? I think people confuse
Good
those
question.
100%. Yeah, I think there's definitely a confusion between what a bookkeeper, controller, a tax CPA, and a CFO are, and they all have separate functions. But what I would say between a controller and a CFO, and we touched on it a little bit, the controller is really just about the past, right? Of looking at the past of where the business is. Like we set a budget at the beginning of the year. The month just ended. Are we in line with the budget? Yes, no, maybe. We have to go
Right.
find out why not. But the CFO looks at that and says, okay, we missed the mark or we hit the mark. Why? And then, do I think we're going to hit the mark in 6 months from now? And I think that's the difference of bringing that type of strategy behind, again, like understanding where the business has been, knowing where it is now, and then based on what we know of what's happening in the future, of coming up with a strategy of how we can prepare for the future. I think that's the difference. Is the CFO is looking forward at where the business is going to be or where we want the business to be and what we can do to get there, versus looking back in the rearview mirror.
And I think CFOs, for me, they kind of look at cash management.
Yeah.
You know, do we have cash in the bank right now? If we have cash in the bank, how can we make some money on the cash we have in the bank? Or
Right.
how can we reduce, we have cash, how can we eliminate some interest, or different ways to move assets around and try to improve the business. So 60% of companies don't last 5 years. Why is that?
That's cash. Yeah, I said before, if you don't have cash, the business, you don't have a business, right? But that is a Department of Labor statistic, I believe, from 2022 or 2024. Yeah, I think it's more than 50% now, but yeah, every 1 out of 2 businesses doesn't see its 5th birthday, which is huge. It's business owners that are really great at selling or making the product or the service that they have, but they're just not great at managing cash. They're not great at actually thinking about what their best seller is, and is it the most profitable product that we're selling, that we're spending the most money on. I think that's what makes or breaks a business, is actually managing cash and understanding your numbers.
This gets down to conversations that we've had many times on this show, Justin, and that gets back to who, not how.
I was just thinking that.
Right.
And it's simply this, folks. When you come to being an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs tend to come out of 2 channels. And the 2 channels they tend to come out of is either sales or creative. And sales means you are a sales machine. You know how to network. You know how to sell stuff. Give me something and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get 1 million people to buy it. Those are what Dan Sullivan refers to as multipliers. Mm-hmm. Then you have people who are these visionaries who are, as Dan refers to them, as simplifiers. And these are people who, I know how to make this thing better than anybody else. I know how to make a whiskey that everybody's going to love. I know how to make this great vodka. So you tend to come to the world with technical skills. You can have these social marketing skills. You can have these technical skills. What's important to understand, all businesses need the selling skills. They need the technical skills. And they need to have the management skills underneath them. So think of this as a triangle. We have three sets of skills here, and the odds are you're really exceptional at one of the three, and you maybe even have some skill or experience in one of the other ones, but you will always lean on the strength. You are always going to default to the thing that makes you feel successful. And this is why we see your example of the chocolate. Why? Because that entrepreneur, I'm going to guess, is a confectioner. That entrepreneur knows how to get in a kitchen and get rid of everybody around me. And I'm going to tinker here, and I'm going to make these unbelievably beautiful treats here that people aren't going to be able to, resist, because I'm going to default to the place where I feel confident. Salesperson is going to default to business is struggling. I'm just going to go sell more. I don't know if I'm making money at it or not. I can push the top line. So I'm going to default to, I'm going to go push the top line. You need the accounting and the management skill on the bottom. And this gets back to the who, not how. When you decide that you're going to be the expert in everything, the growth of your company is very linear, because now the growth of your company is limited to your speed of learning. And understand, I'm going to go back to Dan, and that is, when you spend all your time trying to improve your weaknesses, you just end up as a person who has really strong weaknesses. So you need to go find the who's. So Scotty is one of those potential who's for you. He's one of those who's that you might want to bring in and look at the company. Can somebody call you up and say, I want you to do a health checkup for me. I want you to give my company a physical. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have something that I call a financial pressure test. It is a 10-day deliverable where I pressure test your business across a system that I call the shelf to savings system. So it's broken into 5 layers: your cost of goods, overhead, pricing, growth tax. I pressure test your business across those 5 layers and find where in your business where you're leaking profit and cash flow. And it's without having to sell another unit, right? So most of the time that money is there in the business. People just don't know where to look for it, and that's what I can do.
So that might be something people might want to think about, Justin, is maybe I just bring in a new who with a fresh pair of eyes and a skill set and say, okay, here's what we're doing. What do you see? And by the way, Scott, we do the same thing with people's marketing. You can show us what you're doing currently on advertising, and we'll find where the holes are. We'll be able to come back and say, you're wasting money over here. This isn't working for you, but you could put more money in this thing, and this thing is what's really driving your business. So just like you, I've got 10 different marketing activities going on, but 2 of them are driving 80% of the business. Why aren't you shoveling the money into those ones?
Right.
Put the money, this is where your sales are coming from. Put the money over there. So it's the same kind of thing. How do people get in touch with you? How do they find you?
I actually have a free 14 question quiz out there that people can take, that can show them where they're leaking cash and margin in their business before even doing the financial pressure test. So if you go to palmersadvisors.com/cash, it takes less than 5 minutes to take the quiz. And that's Palmersadvisers.com/cash.
And we'll put a link to that right in the show notes, folks, so you can just go find it and click the link and you'll be able to get right there. So, Scotty, thanks for being with us. And folks, if you enjoyed today's show, make sure you go to wherever you get your podcast, leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. As always, you can always get a hold of Justin or myself. You can go to cpginsiders.com, or you can go to jnhlabs.com, and you can find us at either of those places. And don't forget, if you haven't yet, to get your copy of the 27 Unbreakable Rules. The feedback we're getting on that book has just been phenomenal, hasn't it, Justin?
Yeah.
I mean, people literally telling us, I wish I'd had this 2 years ago. And it's changing everything for them, because it is the manual. It is literally a manual on how to move your product into brick and mortar retail. That's it for today, folks. We'll see you on the next episode of CPG Insiders. If you're looking to greatly increase sales on your CPG product, don't hesitate to contact us at Jekyll and Hyde Advertising and Marketing. By the way, the only advertising agency with a guaranteed result. Just go to jekyllhydeagency.com, or feel free to give us a call at 800-500-4210.